In the 1990s, Noxubee County, Mississippi was a quiet, rural community, but local courtrooms were relying on a death investigation system with a massive, unseen blind spot. For most of that decade, Mississippi did not have a functioning state medical examiner's office. When a suspicious death occurred, local county coroners, who frequently had zero medical training, were left to hire any private doctor willing to conduct the autopsy. A physician named Dr. Stephen Hayne stepped in to fill that gap. Hayne was not board-certified in forensic pathology. He had taken the certification exam decades earlier, failed it, and never attempted to take it again. This chart shows the workload limit established by the National Association of Medical Examiners. They consider 250 autopsies a year to be the absolute maximum a single pathologist can handle before the quality of their work begins to break down. By his own testimony given under oath, Dr. Hayne was conducting between 1,200 and 1,800 autopsies every single year. He maintained this output while simultaneously working hospital jobs and appearing as a paid expert witness in court. Hayne regularly collaborated with Dr. Michael West, a local dentist with no forensic pathology background. West claimed a specialty in bite mark analysis, arguing he could match wound patterns on skin to individual human teeth, to the exclusion of everyone else on Earth. The state's failure to maintain an official medical examiner's office created a vacuum. Hayne and West stepped into it, securing the authority to provide unquestioned expert testimony in trials with people's lives on the line. In September of 1990, a 3-year-old girl named Courtney Smith was abducted from her bed in Noxubee County. 2 days later, her body was discovered in a pond 100 yards from her front door. Hayne performed the autopsy. He noted what he identified as bite marks on the child's wrist and immediately called in West to examine the patterns. West concluded the marks matched the teeth of Levon Brooks, a local man who had previously dated the victim's mother. There was absolutely no physical evidence placing Brooks at the crime scene. While investigators focused entirely on Brooks, they passed over an early suspect named Justin Albert Johnson. Johnson lived near the victim and had a documented history of sexual violence against women and girls. Police questioned him and then set him aside. At trial, West told the jury it could be no one but Levon Brooks who had bitten the girl. The subjective opinions of these two men overpowered the complete lack of physical evidence, and the jury sentenced Brooks to life in prison. Just 4 months later, another 3-year-old girl, Christine Jackson, was taken from her home in the middle of the night. She was assaulted, murdered, and found dead in a nearby creek. The circumstances were identical to the Courtney Smith case. The same rural county, a victim of the exact same age, taken the exact same way, and left in a similar outdoor location. Hayne conducted the autopsy. Once again, he reported finding bite marks on the body. Once again, he called in the local dentist. West examined the wounds and testified in court that they were, in his words, indeed and without a doubt, made by Kennedy Brewer, the boyfriend of the victim's mother. No one in a position of authority paused the investigation to ask how 2 separate men living in the same rural area could have committed nearly identical murders 4 months apart using the exact same obscure method of violence. Justin Albert Johnson, the man with a violent record who had been questioned and ignored in the first murder, lived near this second victim as well. Police investigated him again, and again they let him go. In March 1995, based on the court treating bite mark analysis as settled, reliable science, a jury convicted Kennedy Brewer of capital murder. The judge sentenced him to death. Levon Brooks served a life sentence in prison, while Kennedy Brewer sat on death row. Between the two of them, they would spend a combined 24 years behind bars for crimes they did not commit. As those years passed, Hayne and West continued traveling across Mississippi, providing the same style of expert testimony in trial after trial. The justice system processed these cases exactly as it was designed to, allowing unchecked subjective opinion to secure the state's most severe punishments. 9 years after Christine Jackson's murder, in 2001, the Innocence Project intervened in Kennedy Brewer's case after receiving his letters from death row. By 2001, the technology surrounding criminal evidence had advanced. The subjective forensic opinions of the early 90s could now be tested against the objective mathematics of DNA sequencing. Testing on semen recovered from the 1992 crime scene definitively excluded Kennedy Brewer. He was not a match. Despite this absolute scientific exclusion, prosecutors refused to drop the case, keeping Brewer in pretrial detention for 5 more years. In 2007, a legal team newly formed at the University of Mississippi stepped in. They pushed the state attorney general's office to finally run the unidentified DNA profile against a wider database of possible matches. Hard, verifiable data finally collided with convictions built on unproven dental analysis. The DNA pointed directly to Justin Albert Johnson, the exact same man who had been questioned and set aside by police in both the 1990 and 1992 investigations. Confronted with the results in 2008, Johnson confessed to both murders. During his confession, he told investigators he acted alone and explicitly stated that he had never bitten either of the victims. The marks that 2 forensic experts swore under oath were human bite marks were later identified as post-mortem damage caused by insects and crawfish feeding on bodies that had been left in the water. On February 15, 2008, a judge in Noxubee County vacated both convictions in a single hearing. LaVon Brooks and Kennedy Brewer were released on the exact same day. This counter visualizes the volume of Dr. Hayne's career. At a rate of up to 1,800 autopsies a year, multiplied across nearly 2 decades, the sheer math presents an unavoidable problem. The procedural loop was finally broken for Brooks and Brewer, but the legal framework that convicted them processed thousands of other cases, leaving an entire state's judicial history built on a foundation of junk science. In 2008, LaVon Brooks and Kennedy Brewer were exonerated for crimes they did not commit. Their cases here, at the Noxubee County Courthouse, drew new attention to a pair of forensic experts whose work had been under scrutiny for more than a decade. Michael West's methods had already been profiled by 60 Minutes and ABC News. In 1994, he resigned from the American Academy of Forensic Sciences to avoid an ethics inquiry, yet he continued to work as an expert witness for years. Mississippi courts continued to allow West's testimony because no judge had ruled that his methods failed to meet scientific standards, and because prosecutors consistently found his conclusions useful for securing convictions. Stephen Hayne's career followed a similar path. Investigative reporting revealed that Hayne had no formal state position and lacked board certification in forensic pathology, yet he maintained a near monopoly over death investigations in Mississippi. This chart compares the recognized professional maximum for annual autopsies a year against Hayne's actual volume. He performed thousands of autopsies a year, a physically impossible workload. When terminated in 2008, he was allowed to finish a backlog of 600 open cases. At the time of his departure, the state made no commitment to review the thousands of past cases where Hayne's testimony had already led to a conviction. For decades, the legal system ignored scientific and ethical warnings regarding these experts, acting only after the exonerations in Noxubee County made the failures impossible to overlook. The most revealing evidence against this forensic methodology emerged years after the trials, during depositions in unrelated civil cases. When questioned by an attorney with the Innocence Project, Michael West remained combative. He doubled down on his record and suggested his critics were more interested in freeing the guilty than finding the truth. That posture changed during a 2011 deposition for a different case involving 2 women, Tammy Vance and Lee Stubbs. Under oath, West stated that he no longer believed in the uniqueness of human bite marks and admitted the science was not reliable enough to be used in a courtroom. The man who had spent 2 decades putting bite mark evidence in front of Mississippi juries admitted the foundation of his work did not hold up. Following this admission, Tammy Vance and Lee Stubbs were exonerated in 2013. Despite these reversals, the scale of the remaining fallout is vast. Thousands of unaudited cases across multiple states contain evidence produced using discredited methods. The absolute certainty used to secure dozens of convictions was eventually abandoned by the experts themselves, exposing a system that had relied entirely on junk science. In 2009, Levon Brooks and Kennedy Brewer filed an $18 million civil lawsuit against Hayne and West to hold them accountable for the years they spent in prison. A federal judge dismissed the lawsuit in 2014, ruling that the experts could not be sued for their actions in the courtroom. The court applied a doctrine known as expert witness immunity, which protects witnesses from civil liability for their testimony. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that dismissal in 2017, while Mississippi agreed to pay Levon Brooks $50,000 in compensation. Neither Hayne nor West faced any direct financial or legal penalties. Stephen Hayne died in 2020. He never faced criminal charges, and he retained his medical license until the end of his life. The legal system's rules regarding immunity effectively shielded the individuals who provided the faulty evidence, leaving the victims with little recourse for their lost time. The consequences of this partnership reached into the next decade. In 2021, the state's Supreme Court overturned the conviction of Eddie Lee Howard. The court's opinion noted that Michael West's bite mark methodology had been overwhelmingly rejected by the broader forensic community. At least 9 people convicted on testimony from Hayne or West have since been released. 3 of those individuals had been sentenced to death. Despite these releases, the review of their work remains incomplete. Jimmy Duncan was convicted in Louisiana in 1993. His case relied on the same Hayne-West partnership used in Mississippi. He remains on death row at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, the last person facing execution based on evidence produced by these 2 men. The history of these cases shows what happens when a state prioritizes an expert's confidence over the truth. For 20 years, that confidence was treated as evidence, a mistake paid for by innocent men, and one that still threatens the life of a man on death row today.